ever be forced to address the media and answer any kind of tough question at all. Joining me now is Mark Simone, WOR radio host, and Joe Concha, Fox News contributor and author of Progressively Worse. There's the picture of the book. Looks nice.
Thank you, David.
Another one. You keep turning these things out.
Yes.
All right, Mark, let me play a montage, as we say, from the Democratic National Convention of various Democrat congressmen and others with specifics or talking about not really having a need to get into specifics with Kamala. Roll tape.
I haven't heard from many voters looking for white papers and policy papers. What they want to hear is what her vision is for this country.
The American people.
So you heard that, right? They've got this compilation of all of these people sitting here saying that nobody wants to hear about what the policies are. How do people just ignore this kind of stuff? You know what I'm saying? I think one of the biggest things that people want to see is the actual policies. But then what ends up happening is that when people are asking to see policies, people are trying to shout them down and trying to intimidate people out of listening to these things so that they can compare them logically and see what they want to do. We have a lot of people, which we always have for whatever reason, on a shame campaign trying to stop people from voting their interest. It's really weird. Real quick shout out to everybody that's watching. I appreciate you guys. We got 18 people watching. We got 18 likes. If y'all could throw the 100s in the chat, I greatly appreciate it. And if y'all could smash that like button and get us to 30, that'd be great.
As we say, from the Democratic National Convention of various Democrat congressmen and others with specifics or talking about not really having a need to get into specifics with Kamala. Roll tape.
I haven't heard from many voters looking for white papers and policy papers. What they want to hear is what her...
She said that she hasn't heard from any voters looking for white papers and policy papers. She clearly has never been on social media or hasn't watched YouTube or is not listening to any call-in radio shows or anything like that. Is that an honest statement that lady just made, that there's nobody looking for policy? That's unbelievable. You guys saw that, right?
With specifics or talking about not really having a need to get into specifics with Kamala. Roll tape.
I haven't heard from many voters looking for white papers and policy papers. What they want to hear is what her vision is for this country.
The American people don't vote on policy prescriptions.
I actually think the way the American people think.
The American people don't vote on policy prescriptions. Did anybody vote for that individual there to say that for them?
I haven't heard from many voters looking for white papers and policy papers. What they want to hear is what her vision is for this country.
The American people don't vote on policy prescriptions.
I actually think the way the American people think about this choice is less about the minutia of policy and more about the direction of the country.
Isn't that insulting to American voters, Mark?
This is the great. I can't wait to see how this works out. The media, the Dems colluding on the. This will be the greatest hoax ever pulled off. A blank candidate, an empty suit, no policies, no positions. How hard is it to go on a TV show and answer questions? We're doing it right now. It's easy. It's not hard. If they can pull this off, first of all, it'll be the most frightening thing in the world.
Yeah.
But I just got to believe in the American public and that this all will blow up in their face.
So voters, they just don't need any specifics about how their lives might be changed fundamentally by the next president.
When I heard that,
now,
David,
I want you guys to pay very close attention. You guys see these fellas here having this conversation? Who's chasing them around, shaming them? Is anybody chasing these guys around, shaming them, telling them they shouldn't talk like that? They just need to throw their support behind somebody? So my question is, why do we got to deal with that?
To Nancy Pelosi, where she said, we have to pass the bill in order to find out what's in
right.
it. Remember that?
Right, of course.
During the Democratic National Convention, Donald Trump's name was brought up 160 times on night one. It was brought up nearly 160 times on nights 2 and 3 combined. And on night 4, Kamala Harris's speech, David, she broached Donald Trump 15 times. You know what word she didn't bring up once during her 37-minute speech? Inflation. At last chance.
Or Afghanistan.
Or Afghanistan, for that matter. And what happened, by the way, to price fixing and controlling price gouging? That economic proposal that came out 10 days ago has vanished.
Well, not entirely. We just played, I don't think you heard, but we just played a soundbite from Gene Sperling, who I think is one of the people who came up with the idea on Thursday on Fox.
Yeah.
And he was...
Now, how many people knew about this price gouging policy? Now, why would the price gouging policy have disappeared? Shout out to DeAndre. DeAndre said, bro, left-leaning channels are saying she needs to get into office first, then she can tell us about her policies. Here's my question. Is that how all transactions work? Do you need to just give the people at the cash register some money and maybe they'll put the groceries in your cart? Like, really?
Happened, by the way, to price fixing and controlling price gouging. That economic proposal that came out 10 days ago has vanished.
Well, not entirely. We just played, I don't think you heard, but
Okay.
we just played a soundbite from Gene Sperling, who I think is one of the people who came up with the idea on Thursday on Fox.
Yeah.
And he was doubling down on it. So apparently he's the part of the team that wrote it. So
Yeah.
no wonder he wants to defend it.
But Kamala Harris hasn't talked about it in any way,
No,
shape, or form.
no, she hasn't.
And to Mark's point, how hard is it to prepare for an interview with The View or Rachel Maddow or Gayle King or pick anyone on CNN? That's the thing. The fact that she thinks she could Ron Burgundy her way all the way to the White House. Ron Burgundy,
or
whatever
Biden,
teleprompter Burgundy will read.
remember, Biden wouldn't even have a Super Bowl interview, which is one of the most softball interviews you can get as a president.
Yeah, but even in his basement days, you forget Biden did interviews every day. They weren't long; they were 10 minutes here and there, but he did it every day. I think one of the reasons she didn't want to talk about policy, she would have to get some to talk about it. I don't do interviews on physics.
Yeah, see, that's what I said in my last stream. And also another thing that she would have to do is if she had an interview on policy, since her policies are all extensions of past Biden era policies, we're literally watching what her policies would do right now. We don't need to ask her any questions because we're living through her policies. So if you're not satisfied with how your life is, then more than likely you're not going to be satisfied with another 4 years of her in office. And she has no way to defend against that because we haven't seen anything new from her. And we're living in what she has right now. If that makes sense, give me a thumbs up. If it doesn't, give me a thumbs down.
Because I don't know anything. And
Yeah.
I think that's why she doesn't talk about policy.
Oh, I wish I could interview her.
But while Gene Sperling is trying to defend price controls, I think you're absolutely right about the media. I think the media, because remember, CNN was against it. Washington Post, New York Times, the media did come out against it because they knew it's, they can read history. They know it's failed. But I have a feeling they got a phone call from some of their buddies in the White House saying, hey, guys, lay off. We'll talk about it eventually. But right now, lay off.
Yeah, so it is now incumbent upon Donald Trump during that debate on September 10th to bring it up. So you're for price fixing. You think the government should cap prices in supermarkets, for example, where they have, 1-2% profit margins? Explain further why you think that's a good idea. If I'm Trump, I ask Kamala Harris the questions. I don't depend on the moderators and let her try to explain something without that teleprompter, without pre-scripted remarks. I want to hear how she's going to end fossil fuels, which she said she was going to do, end all offshore billing, abolish ICE. You support sanctuary cities. Right. You're against border wall construction. You're against remain in Mexico. You want free healthcare for illegals. How's that going to work? Oh, you said you want to end the private health insurance industry. How's that going to work? Oh, you want to raise taxes. How high?
But you think it's the former president himself has got to ask the questions because you can't rely on the moderator for that.
Give his position in 20 seconds, which he can do, and then yield the rest of your time to Kamala Harris to explain her position. Put the focus on her, just like it happened on June 27th with Joe Biden. The more she talks, the more it's a human Chernobyl that we're witnessing because she doesn't have the ability to speak.
By the way, what are you guys hearing about the debate? I mean, with all these, there are questions now about whether it's going to go on. Will we see the debate on September 10th?
Now, if you ask me what I believe is going on, why we have the speculation of if the debate is going to happen anymore or not, is because as we're getting closer and closer to the time where Kamala Harris and Trump are going to have to square off, the realities of Kamala Harris having to be able to not have her hand held through things is coming true. And I think people are worried about the great implosion. People are worried about the great implosion that people might see if too much is exposed. So as a result of that, what we're going to do is we're going to try to create some noise. We're going to try to create some distractions, and we're going to blame all the noise and distractions on Trump and kind of sneak out the back door. That's what it seems like is happening anyway.
Probably. I assume from Trump this is a lot of negotiating, and he's brilliant at it.
He went with everything they threw at him for the first debate with Biden, though. He didn't. There was nothing. I mean, some of it his team found objectionable, but they went ahead and did it anyway.
Yeah, I think originally they were supposed to be seated. He got it back to standing.
Yes.
There'll be something here he wants to change. You want to make sure Stephanopoulos is nowhere near this. He's currently suing him, so that should be enough.
So there is a lawsuit current between Stephanopoulos. So it would be clear conflict of interest if he was the moderator. If Stephanopoulos was the
never
moderator.
affected ABC before.
Yeah, right. Why should it buy? So we used to leave it up to the League of Women Voters. For those who don't remember, they were the ones who were going to set the parameters of the debate. They did a fairly good job. I mean, you could criticize them one way or the other. Maybe they had a bias sometimes, but the fact is they did a good job, and they took it out of the hands of both candidates and the media specific. Should we go back to something like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, this shouldn't be something that's negotiated. Like, here are the rules, right? And that's the end of it. And Trump, I think it would be a good idea to have his mic muted again, because Kamala Harris, remember her debate with Mike Pence, her big line was, excuse me, I'm speaking. Right. So if you can't cut her off, that line goes away. But
So they're already onto it. They're already onto the excuse me, I'm speaking. And excuse me, I'm speaking. It's something that's nonsensical. It carries no weight. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to help her with anything. It doesn't do anything. That only works for shame-sensitive simps. Which is why the disaster at the professional journalism meeting took place that Trump went to, because that was their tactic of choice there. You know what I'm saying? Let me know what you guys think.
We used to leave it up to the League of Women Voters. For those who don't remember, they were the ones who were going to set the parameters of the debate. They did a fairly good job. I mean, you could criticize them one way or the other. Maybe they had a bias sometimes, but the fact is they did a good job, and they took it out of the hands of both candidates and the media specific. Should we go back to something like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, this shouldn't be something that's negotiated. Like, here are the rules, right? And that's the end of it. And Trump, I think it would be a good idea to have his mic muted again, because Kamala Harris, remember her debate with Mike Pence, her big line was, "Excuse me, I'm speaking. Right. So if you can't cut her off, that line goes away. But you're right about the media. Boy, I mean, we saw today, for example, the Washington Post actually put out a story saying that Doug Emhoff, the husband of Kamala Harris, is the modern day sex symbol. Quote, "Move over, Ryan Gosling," unquote. If you just want to look.
Yeah, I'm just gonna run that back so y'all can hear that, because that now we're going down the rabbit hole of crazy land.
Who were going to set the parameters of the debate. They did a fairly good job. I mean, you could criticize them one way or the other. Maybe they had a bias sometimes, but the fact is they did a good job, and they took it out of the hands of both candidates and the media specific. Should we go back to something like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, this shouldn't be something that's negotiated. Like, here are the rules, right? And that's the end of it. And Trump, I think it would be a good idea to have his mic muted again, because Kamala Harris, remember her debate with Mike Pence, her big line was, "Excuse me, I'm speaking. Right. So if you can't cut her off, that line goes away. But you're right about the media. Boy, I mean, we saw today, for example, the Washington Post actually put out a story saying that Doug Emhoff, the husband of Kamala Harris, is the modern day sex symbol. Quote, "Move over, Ryan Gosling."
Now, shout out to the women who are in the chat. If there's any women in here, I see Ann in the building. If you guys agree with that comment, ladies, give me a thumbs up. If you guys don't agree with that comment, give me a thumbs down or some clown faces in the chat.
Unquote. If you just want a little flavor of what we're saying.
Wow. I mean, you could say a lot of things about it, but I never thought
the nanny, David.
Yeah.
Full Schwarzenegger.
Oh, yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. So that makes him a star in their eyes.
I have no words. I'm supposed to come on here and talk. I don't even.
Mark, one of the problems that Trump is going to face, he could make charges and make statements about Joe Biden, even when he did with Hillary Clinton, that he may not be able to get away with and deal with Kamala. She's made victimhood a part of her political life for her entire political life. It's been one of the reasons a lot of people said she succeeded. If he tries anything that, she's going to cry victimhood, that, is either race-based or misogynistic or whatever. He's got to be careful here in the debate.
Yeah, I think he knows that. He was careful with a very feeble Joe Biden in the last debate. Tulsi Gabbard wiped out Kamala in a debate. She's helping him. If Kamala Harris was smart, she would negotiate to get the mic muted when she's on. That would probably be the best thing for her.